Okay, so I'm going to make some piping bags out of baking paper. I prefer baking paper over greaseproof because it holds up to moisture a lot better and they're a lot stronger. So these are nice sharp little paper piping bags that I've put together really quickly, and I'll just move that knife out of the way. These are good for royal icing, or if you've just got little bits of decorating to do and you don't need a whole big bag. These are nice, you just fill them up, fold the edges over, and then you can write on cakes or whatever. You can work with these without a tip even. I'll run through how to make it. So we've got baking paper. Try and get a good baking paper. This one's a bit cheap, but it'll do. It just means that they're not quite as strong as some of the better quality ones. So you want to fold your square. It's better to start with it as square as you can because then you get better triangles out of it and your resulting piping bags will be better. So once you've got your triangle, take a knife and then just run down the line. Try and get it as neat as you can. You can use scissors for this, but it takes too long. So there we go. I've got my two triangles. I'll put one of them over to the side. And you want to start with a point towards your body. So with a point towards your body, find the midpoint of the longest section, put a finger on it, just to mark it out, and then take this point here, and you want it to line up with that. And while you do that, you curl the paper over. So curl the paper all over, and line the tips up. So these tips don't really matter as much, but it just kind of helps. Then take the other side, so you want this point here to wrap around and come under there. So we just lift up and over, and then hold it all in place. And from there I can lock all the ends in, but I just want to show very quickly. When I pick that up, that's really tight. So you hold both sides of the legs. Now, if it's loose like that, you'll end up with a rubbish piping bag. It's not very useful. So you want to try and pull that side there, nice and tight, and make sure that it stays like that when you've got it on the board. So nice and tight to keep the tip nice and tight. Fold up the little leggy bits at the bottom, and this will start to lock it all in place. So you fold it over once. I'll make sure that my hands aren't in the way. Fold it over once, and then we've got to repeat that. Then lift it up, fold it over again, and that starts to lock it in. Then you do one last fold, and then that is the piping bag complete. So nice and tight there. Just round that out a bit so that it holds its shape nicer. One perfect little piping bag. So you can make a ton of those just while you're watching TV and have them ready to go for when you're decorating. Keep them in like a tall, like tennis ball container or a Pringles container that's clean, and you'll have them for years. Just they're ready when you want them, and they're really easy to work with. I'll show that in a minute. So just so that I've just demonstrated that properly, I'll show again. So start with your triangle, so it's half a square. The squarer the piece is when you start, the easier it will be. So mark out your midpoint, put your finger on it, point towards your body, take this tip, fold it over like that. All right. And again, it's nice to have these line up, but the most important part is actually the tip up there. Lift that up and go around. So lift that up and go around, and then pull it to keep that tip at the top nice and tight. Now, you can just leave this on the board and try and make sure that there's overlap here. So you don't want it to be like this, where you can see there's a big gap, because that'll be a bit of a point of weakness. You want it to, where possible, just slightly overlap or meet up as close as it can, so you can see that those edges meet. Make sure that you've got a nice sharp tip. Just put that on the board again and make sure that that does that. You also don't want to have like gaps between the layers. So once that's done there, bend up the tail end. So bend up the tail end, and give it another fold just to lock it in place. Nice little fold just to lock it in place. That's our second one, and then the last one, and then it becomes a more permanent structure. So they're done. Put a bit of a shape, and that's it. That's our piping bag, and you can adjust it. If that's loosened off, you can just kind of roll that edge a little bit more, and that'll help to lock it in a bit better. So that's done. So that's our paper piping bags. You can go further than this and use cellophane. So before I do that though, I'll just show very quickly piping with a little bit of this. So I've got some, it's actually German buttercream, or mousseline. It's a filling from a cake. I don't have any royal icing on hand, so I figure this will do. Actually, I'll show. So this is, basically you make a very stiff custard with whole eggs. Some people just use the egg yolks, and surprisingly it comes up quite white. I'll put the recipe up for that at some point later on. It's not ideal for piping, but I tell you what, it's not bad. So now, anytime you're piping, doesn't matter what you're piping, you generally don't want anything bigger than the size of your hand to be working with. You're better off refilling a few times rather than overfilling. Means that your product won't get too hot and just makes your life easier. I'm just going to push that up. So when you're filling your piping bag, so this would normally be royal icing. And that's about as much royal icing as you'd ever want to be working with at a time. Of course you can do it differently if you, but this is just how I do it for like cookie decorating. So you fill that, push that down, you want this much free. Fold this corner over, fold this corner over, and then you just want to roll that down, roll it down, roll it down, and then you get this nice little pouch that won't spray anything back at you, and you can pipe with that really nicely. So I'll just cut the tip of that off. There we go. And you can pipe with that. So, like, and considering this is just buttercream. Yep. That's a really nice nice consistency. Yeah, my handwriting is hideous and it's no better with buttercream, but anyway. You get the idea. Like, if that's royal icing, you can do something really nice with it, or fancy, however you want. So that's one thing that you can do with it. So there we go. Now, if I wanted to have a tip with that, so that's without a tip, and that holds up really well. I mean, really quite well. Now, if I want a tip, line up your tip. I mean, this is quite a large one, but it'll do. And just cut the top of that off, drop your tip in, and you see that it holds in quite nicely. Drop in your buttercream. Well, again, you'd usually be doing this with royal icing, but I got buttercream, so it's fine. Fold your, I'll do it nicer. So fold your edge up, fold your edge up, fold it over, and then you've got this nice little piping bag that you can do a lot with. So pipe your decent swirls. So you get the idea anyway. So if I want to pipe stars, if I want to pipe little swirls, like, it's quite handy. So again, you'd usually be doing this with royal icing. You'd mix up your colors as you go, and that would work out quite nicely. I'll just take some of that out. Now, the other cool thing that you can do instead, and when you're done with that, you just cut the tips out of the bag and squeeze the excess back into your bowl and throw your bag out. Now, when I'm doing cookies and I have lots and lots of different colors, there's a variation on this that I really quite like, and that is with plastic. So I don't like using a lot of plastic, but sometimes, just for my own sanity, it makes more sense. So I made a bit of a mess, shouldn't really have done that, but that's fine. So plastic piping bags, these are cellophane. And exactly the same process, I'll run through that now, but what's nice about this is you can work with chocolate, you can work with a really wet mixture. You can have these set up and ready to go for quite a long time in advance, the same as the paper ones. But if I'm doing cookie decorating and I've got 20 different colors, I can have these folded up the same as one of these. I don't even need a tip on it. And ready to go, just in a jar with a little bit of damp cloth at the bottom, and they'll stay there for 2 or 3 days with no problem at all. The tips don't dry out and the bag doesn't dry out, it doesn't get clogged or anything like that, so it's quite a handy way of doing it. I'll just put my thing back there. So cellophane, get this from the $2 shop, and you want to try and, again, the squarer it is when you start, the easier it will be. So just lay that down, get your scissors, and this would be easier if I didn't have buttery fingers. That's fine. There we go. Nice thing about cellophane is it sort of self-tears. Done, fold that over, and I've got reasonably close to square. Practice with paper first, because it's easier to get the squares right with the paper. And once you've done that, yeah, there we go. That's a little bit off, but it'll do. So now I've got my square of cellophane. I'm going to fold that over to get my triangles. My triangle's going to be a bit off again, just because I'm rushing so you can see, and this is disgusting with all the fingerprints. You normally wouldn't have this many fingerprints. So towards me, then there we go. So now I've got my triangle, and again, same thing, have the point towards you. And, well, that really is disgusting, but you get the idea. It's for demonstration purposes, I won't use these. Now, with the point towards you, you want to secure the cellophane with a little bit of water. So grab a bowl of water. Some people use a spritz bottle, it's fine. And just a little bit of water on the side. Right, so again, tip towards you, find the midpoint, give it a swipe of water down the side, and then just a little bit up to the tips there. So what that will do is when we do that fold over, I'm going to do it this way this time, go the other way. So take that tip over, lay it down, and it secures. And again, I'm just pushing against that to get a really sharp point. And then I just roll it all the way over. So roll it all the way over, and that'll hold on its own. I don't need to do anything more to it than that. So that's the same exact process, just it self-holds. And just that water is enough to hold it. You don't need any more than that. It works really quite well. But if you are working with really heavy-duty royal icing, this is overkill. It's not usually necessary, but you can. Just put a tiny little piece of tape there. Again, it's not really warranted, but it'll do. And I'm going to mix up a bit of colour and just do a buttercream rose, which again, a bit strange, but it's fine. So that's not my water bowl. No, that's my buttercream bowl. Take my German buttercream. And this isn't the one that you'd use for, this isn't the one that you'd use for piping roses, but it'll do. Give it a little bit of colour. Colourful colours, I really love these. It's a bit of magenta and a little bit of yellow, and that'll give me either a really dark red or it'll give me an orange. Hopefully I can keep them separate enough that they won't form red for me. But this is kind of an interesting colour theory thing. So these are hot pink, which is actually a magenta colour, and yellow. So yellow. And when you mix magenta and yellow, you actually get red. So if I just show you that here, I'll see if it'll do it. It's going to hide it. No, this is going to give me a nice soft colour. But hopefully I can show you on here. So red. So I've got my pink and my yellow, and when I mix them together, it actually makes a really sharp red. So I'll just bring that up. So here we go. See if I can get the light to do what I want. I've got my pink and my yellow. When you mix them together, you get a really, really deep, rich red color. There. And if you mix more of the yellow with the magenta, you get a bright orange. But at the moment I'm just getting the red, but you can see in here, what it's doing is what I wanted it to. It's giving me that nice color. So, but yeah, it's quite interesting with the color mill colors. You can actually do CMY colors. So your cyan, magenta, and yellow. So let's clean that up a bit. So that's just a fun thing. I'll do a better demo on that at some point. Now with this piping tip, so work out where your piping tip's going to go. A little bit more of that off. A little bit more. And drop that down there. Yep. Pick that up. So, pick that up. And I'm just going to push that down there. And we do the same thing. So we fold the tops, then we roll the top down. Roll the top down. You shouldn't get too much squishing out. It's just that I'm in a hurry. And getting there, like that. Now, if you really want, you can secure that with a little piece of sticky tape across there, but I don't need to. If you're doing royal icing and you wanted to have your royal icing last a bit longer, that's how you do it. There we go. That'll give me an interesting look. Grab a flower nail and there we go. So just on my flower nail, what I'm doing is just getting a bit of a base that I can work on. And then do that. Again, the German buttercream is not at all what you would use to make a nice flower. So I'm just going to, but just showing that it works. So it's more for the piping bag than anything. 2, 3, nice little closed rows. 4, 5, oh, I'm closing it up a bit much now. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, my buttercream piping's not amazing, but it'll do. You get the idea. And that is just a nice bag that's not going to deteriorate or degrade, sadly, ever. But again, for cookie decorating, you can have that with a really fine tip on it, or even without a tip, just sitting in a container for ages, and it'll hold really nicely. So that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to show. If anyone's got questions, let me know. This is just the way I do it. I know that there are different ways of making piping bags that work much better, but it's just something fun. Anyway, thank you.